Welcome to Don't Fuck This Up, the podcast answering the ultimate question, how the fuck did you land that cool job? I'm your host, Lauren Alvarez. Today, we are very lucky to be meeting with another Lauren. We are sitting down with Lauren Valena. Lauren is a founder in HBIC of BlackHeart Nails, a studio haven for talent, good taste, and nail art located in LA's Eagle Rock neighborhood. Lauren's an artist, amazing human, all-around comic, and truly one of my personal faves. So without further ado, Lauren, welcome to Don't Fuck This Up.
Oh, I'm so glad that you appreciate my stand-up routines that I do every day for my clients. That's the real reason I got into nails, is to practice my stand-up.
I mean, I think that's the vibe. Yeah, totally.
Yeah, the weird vibes really pulled through, and like our inner weird wolves were talking to each other, and we're freaks. It's okay.
Totally. Yeah, I remember the first appointment, your books were full, and I was like, oh man, I really like her. She's so cool. I hope I can keep coming. And at the end, you're like, so I actually have a client that's moving away forever. So would you like to be in my book? I was like, yes. So basically you asked me to prom.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, before we dive into what it's like to be, an incredible business owner, and, I love the way that you think about business and the way that we talk about so much to do with the disruption of the nail industry that's needed, things like that. I mean, let's just back up and talk about you, how are you doing? For real?
I'm okay. I just got back from vacation. My husband and I had our birthday vacation, and we went to my parents' house at the lake, and I got a sinus infection at the lake, which is not great, but
super sexy.
Yeah, basically I got the lake neti pot, and all the lake water went up into my face, and I got an amoeba. So
oh, nice.
Yeah, brain amoebas. We love those.
Or yeah.
Yeah. So that's not super fun, but I'm really pumped to get back into work. I have just started Twitch streaming, which you know about, which has been a fun adventure of kind of just I really let myself be imperfect with that. So that's been really freeing in that way. And yeah, just back to slanging nails, same old.
I mean, I love that. And I think the introduction of the Twitch streaming was such a fun concept. I mean, obviously any chance to share our weirdness with the world is fun. But at first I was wondering if I was going to think a lot about it while I was sitting there as a client. And I was like, oh no, this is actually just feels additive. It feels really fun. What was kind of the catalyst that made you say okay, time to start streaming appointments on Twitch?
Well, I mean, I was really feeling a little bit, I've been doing this for 5 years, and it was just starting to feel whereas my job is great because nails are constantly changing, and the artistic angle of it is I'm constantly adding new techniques. There's new trends that are happening. That part is always changing, but it was starting to feel a little samey for me. And I get bored easy because I am another person in this world that is just glued to our phone, and my attention span is this big. So I was kind of had it in my mind. I was I need to think of something to mix it up. And then I was watching a YouTube video of drag queens doing their makeup together. And one of the drag queens was sometimes I stream on Switch. And I was wait, I didn't even think of that. I obviously Twitch is mainly for video game streaming, but obviously people would stream doing crafts and stuff. But I was what if you streamed beauty rituals, and what if we streamed the nail appointment? Because as you know, I sometimes call the nail appointment the nail podcast.
Yeah.
Welcome to the podcast. What are we talking about today?
Yeah, nail casting.
So I was that just made sense to me to what if I just live streamed the appointment? It was a little bit of a risk in my mind because I was I don't know how my clients are going to feel about it.
Yeah,
hearing your own voice can be disconcerting. And but I was their face won't be on there. I won't mention any of their personal details. It'll just be kind of anonymous hands, and then mostly me just being hilarious and funny. So
I mean, yeah, I fully back it. I mean, some hands less anonymous, but what can I say? I mean, what was tell us your origin story, before you got into nails, like, I mean, one thing that always stands out to me is like when we first kind of started talking about like our lives is like you moved a lot as a kid. And, you know, I'm curious because like you saw a lot of different places like in the country and had a lot of different experiences. Like, and obviously that can impact us in like how we think about like our career and like chances that we take. Like, can you tell us a little bit about your origin story and like what it was like for you coming up and like, yeah, moving a lot and like all those things?
Yeah, I mean, both of my parents have done, like, in their careers, have done the exact same thing my entire life. Like, my mom was a FedEx driver. My dad works in the oil fields and has my whole life. Um, and then my stepmom has been a teacher my whole life. She still is. And so, like, in my life, I've, like, seen a lot of, like, people that were like, we picked our career. This is what we're doing forever. And I kind of, like, thought that that's how it was. And then, like, this is going to sound so corny and dumb and played out, but, like, I think in middle school and high school, I discovered Kanye West's album, The College Dropout.
Yeah.
And it kind of introduced this idea to me where it's like, you don't have to do this thing that everybody's expecting you to do. You can just kind of fuck around until you find out.
Yeah.
And then I went on to drop out of college and then college do every single book. Yeah, do the college dropout thing and then do every single fucking job you can think of.
Yeah.
And I remember one time I was like working at this crappy job and my grandma really wanted me to quit because she selfishly wanted me to be her co-pilot for a road trip she was going on. And she wanted me to be able to drive she wanted help driving the trailer because she collected antiques at the time and she was going to go buy a bunch of like furniture. And she was like, Lauren, life's too short to be treated like shit. And I took that to heart.
I mean, I'm taking that to heart right now. I think that that's like such a significant piece of advice. Just like, I mean, because you've had some like all over the map jobs. I mean, prior to getting into the space, I feel like you were just like, fuck it, I'll try it. Is that the attitude?
Yeah, I've done everything. I've worked at like everywhere from like a startup that made succulent gift boxes to like the shittiest pizza joint. Like I've done everything.
Yeah, I mean, what was like some of your favorite like past life jobs that you've held, or like also least favorite? Like to tell us the worst one for sure.
Worst job I ever had was definitely working at this bakery. That was the one that my grandma told me. She was like, life's too short to be treated like shit.
Yeah.
It was horribly mismanaged. I think that like learning how to run my business, it was partially watching my dad run his business.
Yeah.
And partially watching people that I worked for do it really badly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, we're like, yeah, this is obviously not what you're supposed to be doing. Like, just observing everything that's happening, like, I would do this 10 million times better.
Yeah, you're like, what you're doing is incredibly illegal. Yeah.
Yeah, for starters.
Like,
and it's not even making money, so it doesn't even make sense that you're doing it. Like,
yeah, you're not even having fun being illegal. You're just doing really bad stuff. What was the best one before you got into like running your own show that made you go, oh yeah, fuck yeah, I could do this?
I mean, my best one, if I'm talking about like being like really feeling my like burnout 20s person, like having a nice lazy job, it was like working at Floyd's barbershop. I was a barber at Floyd's, which that was like the perfect job to be a 20s burnout. I just like clocked in, clocked out, and didn't fucking think about it. And my manager really liked me and gave me whatever day I wanted off. But I think like in terms of like learning and like the most fulfilling job I've had was at that startup company. I had a really incredible boss that like took a chance on me when I like had zero experience that was relevant. And I Googled my ass through that job and she really believed in me and like held my hand through a lot, and it was awesome.
That's amazing. I think that also like having someone who hands you the baton and they're like, I just see something in you. Like I had a boss like that and it was pivotal for me. I mean, he like trusted me to do stuff I had no business doing. And it was so empowering just to have that like person say like, no, like you can do this. And like, you're not going to break anything, you know? And I always keep that with me. It's like, maybe you do break something, but you don't do it twice. But like somebody who like sees that potential in you. And like, literally I remember this dude being like, he held out his hands when he was interviewing me and was like, you know, not in a creepy way. He held his hands up by his face and he was like, you know, your experience experience is like this wide and was like, 15 inches wide and like this deep, like half an inch, and he's like,
True.
Yeah. And he's like, so I don't know exactly what I want to do with you, but I feel like you've got something really interesting. Like, do you want to come figure it out here? And I was like, fuck. Yes. Like, that's so cool. Like, you see me and like, yeah, I didn't have deep experience in any one area, when I was doing that. But that person who just like saw something and was like, you're creative. You're good at solving problems. Like, that's the fucking thing that like we need to hear when you're sort of like, I don't want to work at a mall and retail forever. I am 100% sure of that.
Yes. I think it's so important to like, especially as like having been given that chance and then like turning into the person that could give people those chances is like, and I think that like, that's something that like people need to remember when like people are hiring. And I see people struggle so much, like trying to get jobs and it's like being immediately dismissed because of your like experience or like whatever your piece of paper says. And like those kind of leaders are so important that can like see through whatever's on the piece of paper and kind of like see the person that's underneath, like the skeleton of what makes up that person, and being like, this person is 100% trainable. They're like a sponge and they're going to excel at this better than anyone that like says on paper that they're like the smartest person in the world,
I love that. Yeah. And I think it's also like being able to like see beyond like, I know that there's a lot of times that people have like, they're self-conscious of like, well, I've been in industry for, 4 years. It's like, well, you've been busting your ass for 4 years. That's a lot of appointments. Like in, the case of being like in the nail world or like hair or like any kind of like service industry where we're like caring for other people, that is a lot of work in 4 years, And so I think that number, people get really stuck on that number. Is that something that like you experienced early on and that you were just like, hello?
Yes. Oh my God. I mean, I'm coming from the hair world. First, like before I even got to nails, that's like such a problem in the hair world because there's like this idea that you have to like be somebody's bitch for so many years before you're magically good at hair, and which is like so untrue. There's people that are in beauty school that just like get it. They understand it. They can absorb everything. They like have that kind of like spatial knowledge of like how to do hair and make it look beautiful. And then there's people that are like have been doing it for 30 years. And like, girl, they don't know what they're doing.
Yeah,
they're like fucking up hair.
Oh, that haircut again? Really? I think you touched on something that's like really, really important. Like talking about like the art of like apprenticeship. Like I feel like it is less and less that we see people like stepping into like apprentice type roles, or everyone's like, I want a mentor, but like what does that mean exactly? And like there is some art to apprenticeship. Like, what do you think about that? Kind of as the industry stands now.
I think that like the way that apprenticeships work within my industry right now is like extremely broken. I think that it's become, and I mean, this is the fault of like also like larger brands, like particularly hair brands within the beauty industry, like stepping in and like creating like concept salons and like monetizing every single, like trying to make it vertically integrated, right? And like we really need to break away from that because those companies, they don't give a fuck about artists. They're just making shampoo. And so like the training of the people doesn't matter as long as they know how to sell the product, right? So I think that like that aspect of it, of like training people for so long, and this like also there's also the added element of this really tired, played out and cliche notion that like, oh, I went through it, so you have to go through it too.
Oh, I had to suffer, you're gonna suffer. And I'll say like honestly, like as a woman, like I see this a lot with like other women in industry, like where they're like, I had to like claw through the dirt, so like here's some dirt that I've laid down for you to claw through, even though it's unnecessary. Like what?
It's unnecessary. Like, yeah, and it's just like there's no reason for that. So instead of trying to like make people suffer and like build character or something, like why aren't we investing in the best parts of them and creating artists that are going to like actually make this field stronger, create a better world for beauty people to like exist in, break away from these ideas that like brands own us, and like be the badasses that we are, and do what we like set out to do, which is connect with our clients.
Yeah. I think it's interesting because like there is so much. I mean, like there's probably like a million things, but like what's like one idea you think the majority of people get wrong about the beauty industry, specifically the nail industry? Like, you know, what's the biggest one?
I think one insane misconception that I hear literally all the time is within the nail industry is that like there's a lot of like racism and xenophobia that is within this nail industry just because historically nails like the nail industry has been dominated since the 60s by Vietnamese immigrants, especially women, which there's a whole story about like Tippi Hedren and how that started happening. You can Google it. It's super interesting. And I think that like people's expectations, which is rooted in like internalized or maybe not internalized like misogyny and racism, which like creates this like there's just like so many elements of that like feed into like everybody's conception of like what a nail service is, how much it should cost, like where you get it, who is doing it, to what language they speak, all of that.
They get everything wrong. Everything that they are thinking is probably wrong.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I think there is so much broken about, you know, the salon space when it comes to like nails. There's also the direct kind of, you know, content to content consumer space, where people aren't even going through schooling, and how artists are compensated. I mean, like there's so much there like to unpack. I just gave like,
we could spend hours unpacking like what's wrong with it.
Yeah. I mean, talk to me about like, I mean, you recently restructured, quasi recently, I guess it was like a year ago, your pricing to include gratuity. Like, let's talk about like that, like as like one decision that you made, kind of what led to it, and like, you know, how that's going.
You know, honestly, I had been thinking about it, and it was another one of those things where I was like watching a YouTube video and someone said something and it clicked. And I watched a YouTube video that was like, oh, did you know that like the reason why tipping is so like prevalent in America has to do with it's like a leftover of like post Civil War America, because I guess like when there's and it like the fact that like the reason why we do tipping in America is because basically like when the Civil War ended and like enslaved people were freed, they like white employers didn't want to pay people, so they like put it on the customer to pay their employees. And I was like, that is so gross. Like, why are we still doing this? Like, fuck that. The price is the price. Plus, I love the like streamlined idea of like my customers can go directly to my Instagram page or my website and look at my pricing and be like, I know how much money I'm going to pay, and walk out the door. And I think that that's so important too, especially with like our consumer base shifting away from like, this is going to sound rude, but like boomers and like older generations are aging out of getting these kind of services and like, you know, aging out like, and also, you know, like, so we need to start thinking about who is our new consumer, which is not going to be boomers. It's going to be Gen Z, and after them, Gen Alpha, right? And I think that Gen Z people are so used to shopping online, and they like to know exactly how much it's going to cost and how much they're going to pay and leave out the door, and to like streamline that as much as possible.
And free shipping. They want free shipping.
Yeah.
They want it now. Yeah, I mean that's like such an interesting, I actually didn't know that about the kind of custom of tipping, and I love like that's like one of my favorite things about doing this is like I learned so much. But I also think that like are there moments that are appropriate to like go above and beyond? Like I do really believe in like, you know, if I've got a little extra, I want to like share it with my people who like keep me looking right, you know? And so is there a moment that's like appropriate for tipping, you know, in, you know, somebody who has it included, or is it kind of gauche and like, just keep your money and don't be weird?
No, I think that like, if you feel like you would love to like treat your service provider, like ask them what they're comfortable with. That's like the easiest way to do it. Like be like, hey, I really want to treat you extra. And maybe they'll be like, send me a fucking Starbucks thing on the app, or like, you know, my birthday's coming up. If you want to like get me a little treat, then that's fine. Or like a snack at my next appointment, whatever that is that they're comfortable with. I think that that's like the best way to approach it.
Yeah, I think that's really cool. And like, I always like love, like, I remember when I worked like in the beauty and editorial space, like when someone would show up with like a coffee for me, and I was like, oh my God. Like it would
Oh, yeah.
it just like melts me. I'm like, you thought about me and you knew it was 3 p.m. and then I'm fiending. Like absolutely like needed. I mean, with you, I might bring you Taco Bell. I know what your real love is. Yeah. I
Yes.
mean,
If you brought me
yeah.
a Baja Blast, you're mine forever.
Yeah, I mean, the way that artists are compensated, like, you know, you're a business owner, you have, you know, a nail space, like you just opened a second space, congratulations, like, and you
Thank you so
did
much.
so much of your own build out. But when you think about like how artists are compensated, and I know that they're not on payroll for you, like they're renting desks, like, can you talk a little bit about your decision to go in that way and, you know, sort of what that looks like for them and like however much you're comfortable sharing?
Yeah, I mean, here in California, it's really, really complicated to employ people in a way that is like, but in a commission space, that in a way that's ethical and also legal.
Yeah.
So, and also like makes you money at the end of the day, right? So, for me, it was mostly like how can I check all the boxes of like complying legally, making sure that these people are getting paid what they need to, and also like making it make sense for myself. And rent made the most sense for that.
Yeah.
And that way too, I really also believe in like investing in people who can learn how to do this on their own, because this is like one of the most accessible ways for anyone who is feeling like they want to own their own business but doesn't want to like maybe make the jump into like, I'm gonna open like the next fucking Facebook or whatever.
Yeah.
Like this is like a way that you can employ yourself, you can make your own rules, you can set your own schedule, and I think that that's really empowering.
Yeah.
And that's why I do what I do, because like I'm really bad at having a boss, so I just am my own boss.
Yeah.
So and I think that there's a lot of also salons that like take advantage of artists too, because they either don't know their rights or they just like they aren't thinking about the like the health and the independence of their artists. So I wanted to make like a safe space that was all of that, and also like a place that was like a community of like-minded individuals that were trying to build their own businesses and like elevate the nail space.
Yeah. I mean, I think it really comes through because, like, anytime I step into the space, I mean, obviously I'm just like geeking because I get to see you, but like the other people who work in this space, it feels like there's belonging. It's very welcoming. It doesn't feel like you have to be a certain type of person to walk in the door. And I find myself being able to like fully exhale when I'm there and just kind of like relax into the experience of having the appointment. Like, I don't feel pressured to come in with some like wild idea that like I need to like blow you away with in order for you to like think I'm a credible client. Like sometimes I'm like, I want to be kind of boring, and you're like, but that can be really pretty too, you know. And other times I'm like, how many things can we glue onto my nails in this time frame? And I think that like that flexibility comes also from like the other people in this space where you just really don't feel judged. So like I just have to give you props, like curating that space, like really creating that environment for people to come in. I mean, it really comes through, and that's hard to do. It's really hard to do.
Yeah, I was really intentional about that too, because again, I worked at a place when I first started doing nails where I like learned from the business owner's mistakes, and I was like, oh, we're not going to do that. I worked for this woman that ran a really toxic salon environment, and one thing that she said, she was like, we don't do pink and whites, and I'm like, what if someone just wants some pink and whites? Like
Sometimes it's cute.
yeah, like and like jokes on you, that's like trending now, so
Yes, I know. I mean, yeah, I think that like why like again like why be judgy? Like why
yeah.
push someone away from an idea that they have, even if you're like, yeah, this is like fairly basic. But if it's executed really well, and that's the other thing I will say is like the quality, like, and I'd love to talk about like the quality of nails, because like there is that like kind of content creator world for nail artists, and there are some people who are really thinking about the integrity of like the entire service. But like that's one thing that like being your client, like I've really like seen is like my nails are so strong, like very rarely do I get a break, and if I do, it's fixable, and in a couple of appointments it's perfect and back to like where it was supposed to be. Like the focus on nail integrity is something that maybe is less prioritized by other artists. Is there something you can speak to there of like the why, and it remains important to you, and also maybe talk about that?
I think it remains important to me because I love getting my nails done, and
Yeah.
I am rough on my hands. So like when I think about like the technicality of like how my nails are getting done, I just try to apply that to my clients. Like I know that they're being as rough, if not rougher, on their hands. And I'm like, how can I make it so that like their shit isn't falling apart? Because there's nothing more stressful to me than like your nail lifting and you're like, I have 10 million things to do today. And like
in 10 days till my next appointment, what do I do?
Yeah, you're like, that's just like an added layer of stress that like nobody needs. So I try my best to avoid that. And I think that like proper education has a lot to do with that. And I've been very lucky to be surrounded by like incredible nail techs that have taught me so much just from letting me watch them or when I've asked them questions specifically. So yeah, that's been a huge blessing for me.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so from a technical standpoint, because I am not a nail artist and I don't know, what is the hardest thing to like get right? Is it maybe different if it's like gel or not gel polish, but like what's the learning curve for like certain things or the hard stuff?
I think honestly, like the hardest and most frustrating part of starting this is that there's like a million different products and like trying to find out which one is like takes forever. It's costly, like because you put your product on your client and then you're like, okay, like everything looks perfect, amazing. They walk out the door and they come back in like 3 weeks and they're completely trashed. And so you're like having to troubleshoot retroactively and like try and be like, okay, so like maybe we'll try this, and then it just like is such a long process, and you're also stressing, you're like, I hope that they don't hate me and leave, because like I need to find the perfect combination of stuff that's going to work on this person. And I think that like my advice for anyone is like, once you find something that works for most of your clients, just don't change it.
Yeah
because it
is probably always there.
Yeah.
And what advice do you have for people to be a better client?
Better client. I mean, all the obvious ones are there, like show up on time, tip if they take tips. But I think also like the ways that you can be a better client is like what helped me the most as when I was starting out, and especially like when I branched off on my own, was literally just like tell your friends. That I got my books full so quickly just because my clients posted about me. They told their friends told their friends. Like that really is your best advertisement. I know we can talk about like content creation, putting it on Instagram all day. But I've noticed that like, maybe every once in a while, like I'll get a client from Instagram, but most of the time it is someone who's been referred.
Yeah. And I think that also, I mean, that's how I found my way to you, and, I'll always be grateful to Kate for, for moving to Connecticut, starting her own thing and being like, who you really need to see is Lauren. And that's
big shout out to Kate. We love her.
Yeah, we love Kate. But I think that also, like writing reviews, like funny enough, like I'm the kind of person, like if I love something, like I am fucking writing you a review, and like, is that helpful? How much business comes from like Yelp or Google, or like, is there like a best way to do that? Is it Instagram? Like what's the plug when it comes to like sharing the gospel outside of like the friend circle?
I think that is the gospel truth is like Instagram, social media is king, because you're getting like people that follow you on Instagram either like know you or like what you're about, and they're like more likely to trust like what you personally say, because there is like maybe like an actual relationship or a parasocial relationship that's happening there. Google is second best. It does not have that like parasocial like aspect to it, because these are just like anonymous randos. So you kind of like, I think that people that read Google reviews kind of take it with a grain of salt, because they're like, this could be good, this could be bad. I know I do.
But, 100%. I mean, like if I'm reading, if you get really granular with the reviews, you're like, wait, you reviewed the Dunkin' Donuts on Glendale Boulevard? What happened?
I know. I always crack up when like a Wendy's has 5-star reviews. I'm like, what? Is this also, Wendy's better?
Go there because 5 stars is hard.
Yeah. I mean, I'll fuck around and get a baked potato.
I mean, I'm more of a Frosty gal, but like, yes, I'll go with you. Totally.
But yeah, I think that like Google is probably second best, Yelp maybe below that, and then we do get a lot of reviews on like my like personal booking website, but because of the like Google ranking on that, like the SEO ranking on that, it doesn't like amount to meaning much. But we always appreciate being told how awesome we are. So
I mean, yes, definitely. I mean, I think like even like looking at numbers for like the beauty industry, and like I am like a data nerd, so I did like do some recon, and it's really interesting. Like the global beauty industry, like this year in 2023 is set to be $571.1 billion globally. It's an 8% increase like year over year, like one of the fastest annual growth rates is like in the last like 15 years. And it's also grown like since 2015, it was worth 458 billion. So that's like over $100 billion of growth, like in a very short amount of time. And then like zooming in further, like even looking at like private label, like nail cosmetics in the US alone is worth like $215 million rather, like in the US. And so like looking at like those portions and just like huge pieces of the pie, do you see opportunity for people who maybe are in their own thing, like creating their own product or like collaborating on product? Like what's the way forward of like, I want a piece of this pie. Wow, the beauty industry, maybe I'm not a nail artist, but like I believe in the product. Like what's the approach on that? Because I know you've talked a little bit, and no pressure to reveal anything, but like wanting to create your own products, like out of frustration of like, hey, this thing doesn't exist. I want this thing, or I want a better version of this. Like, what is the creation process like so far, or like what can you share about that?
I'm still researching that. I'm still trying to figure that out. I think that like it has to do with getting in touch with like labs that create these things, right? And getting in touch with those people is like nearly impossible. I've sent like a million emails and gotten none back. So I think I need to actually start like
game,
picking up the phone. So I'm not entirely sure. That's my answer. I'm still figuring that out myself.
No, totally. It's interesting because I do see like artists that have like created their own like specific product, or like, versus like a line of products, which is very expensive. And just like, you look at those numbers and you're like, okay, maybe there is like some return on that investment, but like you need some capital to like get that rolling. And like, that's a lot.
Yeah. And the capital is the hard part, right? That's like either saving up your own coin or convincing someone to invest in you.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what advice do you have for somebody starting out who like wants to transition to being a nail artist, or maybe they're in hair, or maybe they're in something that's adjacent, or they're doing it on their Instagram and they're like, people keep liking this stuff. Like, obviously there's the logistical side, go to school and get licensed because you have to be. But like we've talked about cosmetology school, a little bit laughable, but you still have to do it. What else?
Yeah, go to the cheapest one that fits your schedule. That's my advice on school. Whatever will get you your piece of paper, because it's not like going to like the Harvard of beauty schools matters.
Right. Like, that's really good advice.
That does not matter. The second thing I would say is like start messaging people that you like reach out. That's how I got my mentorship. Is I was kind of like sneaky about it. I moved to LA and I was like, I want to work with this woman, but I don't know how to like say that. And so I just like messaged her, and I think like the universe just like knew, because I messaged her. I was like, hey, I know your books are closed, but like I took one of your classes. So, like if your books ever open, like I would love to like get in with you. And she was like, yeah, I would love to have you in. And then she got me in to do like my nails. And she was like, listen, do you want to work with me? Because I really need an assistant.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, the universe really was just like, here you go.
Yeah. But if you hadn't had the, like, even just like, comfort of reaching out, knowing someone's books are closed, asking the question of just even like, I want to patronize you as a client, just like to sit in front of you, like that says a lot about you too, just like taking chances.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not a chance. It's a message. Like, do not build it up in your mind like it's going to be some kind of scary thing. What's the worst that you can do? Ignore you? Say no?
Yeah.
Like, and if they say no and they're a dick about it, then they weren't worth your time anyway.
And is that really the kind of person you want to work with? Absolutely not.
Exactly. Yeah.
I go through that all the time. I'm like, if somebody is like, not cool about something that I ask out of like comfort, like I'm never approaching something to be like malicious, like in this type of instance. But like if somebody is like unwilling to share with me, like then you are not the kind of person that I want to be in your orbit anyways, because like, ugh.
Right. And the best way to like frame that is to like, be like, hi, do you offer classes, or do you offer this some kind of apprenticeship? Like, is there something I can give to you in the terms of like money, time, labor, that like you can also like impart your wisdom onto me? Because like it never feels good to just be like, hi, how much is this? How did you do this? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That feels a little bit like you didn't think about it. But if you're thoughtful about approaching people, I think that like they're going to respond accordingly.
Yeah, it's so interesting because even like as someone who like gets nail art on my nails or like likes to have my nails look good, like people ask, they're like, "Oh, I love your nails," and they're like, "How much does that cost?" I'm like, it's such a weird, like that to me is like such a weird, like 0 to 1,000. It's like, and it's not that I feel like it's expensive or not expensive, but it's like, that's a very subjective definition. What might feel really affordable for me might feel like prohibitively expensive for somebody else. And so, I think that also like, I'm really cognizant, like when I refer people, like I love that you're transparent with your pricing. Cause like if I'm like, Lauren's amazing, like check out her Instagram, and then I can easily like sort of transfer that weight of them doing their own fucking research and deciding if it's a good fit for them. I also don't want to send you crazy people. So like I'm pretty cognizant of that too.
Thank you. Thank you for
I'll
that.
be like, oh, I don't remember where I got them done. Just like run away because I don't want to send you people who are unwell or don't see the value in the service. I think that's maybe like the biggest thing for me is if like people snap judgment is like, oh, that's really expensive. Like there are ways to find things that work for you. Like I just find it really interesting, like in Paris, for example, like, or in France in general, but like in Paris, you see it that pedicures are considered medicinal. Like it's like it's like a doctor's appointment. Like it's not because like you want to have, Barbie pink toes. It's because it's actually really good for your feet. And similarly with your hands, I feel like there's definitely a health benefit there, right?
Yeah. I can imagine for Parisians, they're walking all the time. It's super important to get a pedicure.
Yes.
But yeah, with your hands as well, it's like, a lot of you could go your whole life and never do your nails and just like clip them at home, sure. But there is like, if you want to preserve like the health of your skin around your nails too, that like taking care of it in a correct way is going to make a difference, right? And also the difference between going and like, even if you, let's say you are going to go get a manicure, going to someone that is going to take care of your hands and make sure you don't get an infection and uses clean implements, all of that stuff is like important too. So I think that there's like, yeah, think about the cost, but also think about like what that costs.
Yeah, definitely. And I think like there's like the longevity of it too. Like if you could build it into your budget, like, if you make more money, then you spend more money. Like it's not like, oh, I just have this pile of money sitting here. Like I've never once had that happen to me. That would be nice, but like it's not happening. But like, so people kind of figuring that out, like with a budget, is it like good to be transparent with your artist, or does it make you feel like under pressure if someone's like, hey, I can spend this, I can only come in realistically this often? Does that help you like to give that framing, and like should a client feel empowered to share that, or is that weird?
Yeah, I'm all about transparent conversations around money, especially when it comes to like, we're doing a transaction, like we're going to have to talk about money at some point. Let's get it out of the way. So I think that like approaching your artist and being like, hi, I have this budget, and don't expect that if they're like, I can't work within your budget, like don't get miffed, don't get mad. I've seen so many people, like we have a nail group chat that literally just happened last week, and she was like, I have $50 and I want a full set of acrylics and a pedicure. Like someone sent this like screenshot to her, and she was like, what do I say to this? Like no one in my shop will do it for that low. And I'm like, I don't think anyone will do it for that low. And the what happened was, apparently my friend took too long to respond to that, and they just blocked her. So there are just like weirdos out there, but I think that if you approach with good intentions, you like lay out what your budget is, how often you can come in, and like maybe you're like a special occasion like nail person, and maybe also if you don't fit within someone's budget, maybe they have a reference for you too. Maybe they have an assistant, or they know someone that's just starting out that's looking for clients, and like to refer them out. That's like, we do talk to each other. So
yeah, that's like really good advice too, because I feel like people get really embarrassed, to be understandably so. Like there's a lot of shame around money, but I feel like if you're getting a service and like honest about like how often you can do it, then it's like easier to be upfront, and then you're not feeling like, wow, that person like didn't want to rebook. It's like, no, I knew what it was going to be. They came in, it was a special thing, and like here we are moving on.
Yeah, and then you don't have to have that like awkward conversation of like, because I got into the habit really early on when I started doing nails. I was like, oh, you know how you do get money is like at the end of your service, and you say when you want to book your next one, and people will book their next one. And I love it when someone is like, oh, hey, like, I'm going to like hold off on booking my next one, because of X, Y, or Z. Like, I don't care what excuse you come up with, but like, if you don't want to book your next one, that's great. And I think that like having that conversation right up front is the best way to do it. Don't like make an appointment because you feel pressured and then like cancel it later. Like you're just taking up space on their book and wasting their time. So yeah, just be transparent. Like I think if we were all just like way more real about where we were at, like stuff would be so much easier.
Totally. I mean, how do you make the decision to raise your prices? Like, when is it time to raise your prices? I always get like really excited. I think we talked about this before. Like, I love when my service providers raise their prices, not because like I'm just like looking for ways to like give away my money, but like, yes, I am, because it's people who I entrust with like my wellness or, my look or like whatever. It always makes me really happy because it's like the same way that we would celebrate getting a raise in like a large organization, but you're like an independent artist or an entrepreneur and you're doing this for yourself. How does that decision come about? And like, is it really hard to do? It seems like it's really hard to do.
I think that a yearly price raise is very important. You don't want to end up like playing catch up. I've been in that boat before where you're like, oh, I started out too low and now like I don't want to sticker shock my current clients. So like make sure you're like consistently raising your prices at least a little bit to account for inflation. And a great way to like give yourself a pay bump and a great like indication that you need to do that is that your books are full.
Yeah, definitely.
Because like if you lose some clients from that, like Kate actually said something really hilarious and amazing, which was it's a lot easier to find like 3 $100 clients than it is to find 6 $50 clients.
That's right. And the loyalty, because they're investing in the service, is definitely going to be higher.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, tell me about like, you don't have to use specifics, but like, when is it time to fire a client? And do you have any good stories around firing a client? I mean, or like, maybe more generally speaking, if you don't want to be specific, I totally respect that. Like, when is it time to fire a client?
It's time to fire a client when you look at your books and you see that name on your books and you're like, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. It's time to say goodbye.
Yeah, totally.
Like if you get a pit in your stomach and your day is just like ruined, then their $100 is not worth it. Like however much they're paying you, they're probably not tipping you. Like they're probably making you work so much harder for whatever it is you're doing. Or they just like said something shitty to you and they're like an energy vampire. Like whatever. You do not need a reason, babe. Just say bye.
I mean, I think that's a good rule for like most things. Like I have that with like, if you're like my friend and when you text me, then I feel some kind of way. You're not my friend. I think I just need to be honest that like we've eclipsed that moment. And
yes,
maybe we feel the same way.
Yeah, that's a great way to approach any relationships. If you feel dread, like maybe that person's not for you.
Yeah, totally. I mean, what goals are you pursuing right now? What's on the horizon for you and your pursuit of like never-ending growth? I mean, that's one thing I love about you, but like, what are you pursuing?
I mean, I want to like move into a space where I'm like behind the chair a little less often.
Yeah.
And like maybe just like kind of like making income in other ways. I also I just had my first like class at the studio this last month, and that was really great and fulfilling. And I would love to like, it was also a great learning experience. I like learned a lot from it. And so I would love to like start moving into the education world, whether that means like in person or online or whatever. I think that I have like a lot of experience and things to teach people, and I would love to share that. I would love to one day like take on another mentor like I had with Sika, but like just right now the time isn't right. But like one day I would love to do another mentorship because that was like so fulfilling for me.
Yeah. And for those listening who are curious, Sika, whose handle is Claude by Sika, is an amazing artist who worked, with Lauren, had some experience, came in, worked with Lauren, and is now on her own, like has running her own books and works in the studio at BlackHeart Nails as well, which is super cool.
Yeah, she's like better at nails than I am. So
that's not what I said. But I have Jessica, and she does know exactly what the fuck she's doing. So
she's amazing. She's so good. She's like a prodigy. I love her.
Yeah, and very inspired. I think that's one thing about the other artists who work in the space with you is like everyone's really inspired from different things, and whether it's travel or like anime or like something that they saw online or like a wild wallpaper pattern, like it's so cool to see like the inspiration in the artist because it's very, very tangible as a client.
Yeah. And I feel like we have such a like a collage of personalities too, that like there's someone for anyone at our salon. And I love that, like, that makes everybody feel welcome.
Yeah. I mean, so you kind of touched on this a little bit, but I think like asking like the full question of like, what values are like important to you and you think about the kind of business you want to be known for having?
I want to be like have an ethical space that is welcoming for everyone. That's like number one goal. Like I want everyone that works for me to feel comfortable, and I want our clients to feel comfortable. And like that's number one. And I also want to create a space that's like safe for everyone that works at the salon, because I feel like so often, especially in the service industry, like we're asked to do things that make us feel uncomfortable because of like, you know, the customer is always right or something. But I think that like creating those boundaries creates safety, not only for the service providers, but also for the clients. And I want everybody that works at my salon to know that if they need me to yell at someone, I will.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, don't worry if you're afraid of like interactions that like I will confront someone if they're being
absolutely. I've seen the baseball bat behind your station. No, that's
hopefully I never have to use that. That's for robbers.
For robbers, maybe ghosts. I don't know.
And maybe the Spectrum guy if he comes around one more time, because I'm sick of it.
All right, Bruce, it's time for you to leave.
Stop trying to hawk me your internet.
I don't want it. $89.99 is way too expensive. Are there any brands or like that are your favorites right now, or who you feel like you're doing business right? They could be like totally outside of like your industry, but like any brands that you look to that you're like, fuck yeah, I like what they're doing.
Actually, yes, there is a new nail brand that like they're pretty new to the scene. I think their branding and their like graphic design is incredible, and I've been in conversation with like whoever runs their social media accounts. I think it's like a pretty small company right now, but I think that they're making big moves. It's called Function of Vex. I'll send you it so you can put it in the notes later. Yeah. They're like a new nail brand. They make gel products, and their focus is like creating products that are good for professionals and also like easy for DIYers to access to.
Amazing.
And I think that like their ethos and their mission is really cool, and I like would love to work with them. So I think that they're one to watch. That's all I can think of right now. I'm sure there's other companies that I'm like into, but
no, that's really cool. I think in like I always appreciate like in your space, you're always like sort of monitoring what's new, and I know you like invest a lot in products to have in the space and like, you know, supplies and, you know, whether it's like gems to glue onto the nails or like, you know, all sorts of different lines to try. It's not like you come in and it's like, pick your OPI color or some bullshit.
Yeah.
Like, there's just like such an array of like true, like kind of feel like you're going to like Blick or something and you're like, oh my God, look at all these paints. And I think that's like really amazing because like you're also supporting a lot of like smaller brands and companies that maybe are just starting out or are lesser known. And I think you've prioritized that in your space. It comes through.
Thank you.
So, I mean, I can't believe like we're already coming up on an hour. This is crazy. Where can people go to learn more about you, to learn more about the space, to learn about your classes?
Right now, my Instagram is the best place to find me. It's lauren.blackheart on Instagram. I also have a website that is under construction, but keep your eyes on it. It's blackheartnails.com. Those are the two best places to find me. You can find all of my like general linkage on my Instagram, and that'll lead you to places you never imagined.
Like the Twitch stream.
like the Twitch stream, or Sika, my former assistant, or all the other wonderful people that work with me at the salon.
That's amazing. What's one final thought you want to leave our listeners with today?
Always, if they take tips, tip your provider, and, you know, start thinking about every single person that you come into contact with that is running their business as a business owner, who is running a business, and like treat them with that kind of respect. I think that's the most important thing. I think that like collaboration across, because if you are someone, I'm assuming that's listening to this, that is like into careers, like be creative about your collaboration and think of every single person that you meet that is like running a business as someone that you could potentially collaborate with. And I think that will expand your possibilities and your horizons.
It's amazing. Well, Lauren, thank you. This has been another episode of Don't Fuck This Up, the podcast answering the ultimate question, how the fuck did you land that cool job? I'm your host, Lauren Alvarez, and we'll talk to you next week. Don't Fuck This Up is a podcast written, produced, and edited by Lauren Alvarez. New episodes dropping every Wednesday. Be sure to follow, rate, and review this and every episode. And until next week, please keep it together and try your best not to fuck this up.